5 tactics for catching bedding bass. Welcome back to the Googan Lab. Let's get it. So we're gonna be looking at baits and tactics to target bass visually when you can see them on the beds, and maybe you're just suspicious there's some on the beds. Up in the shallow, springtime, when the water gets in the 60s, bass move up and they make these little divots in the dirt, in the ground. And they move up there, they stay on these beds, and they get aggressive, territorial, and if you know exactly where to cast and what to throw, you can be really successful in springtime and even find old Mondo on the bed. So the first thing that we're gonna talk about is a weightless bait. The weightless bait approach is what I love to start out with, because if you're not really sure, you haven't taken some time to really look at the bass and see how it's behaving, if it's skittish or not, a weightless bait is a really non-threatening approach. And if a bass is skittish, that's usually the first thing that they'll eat. A more aggressive bait might scare them off. So I like to start out there. One of my favorite ways is going wacky rig with a lunker log or a slim shake. You could also weightless Texas rig these if the fish is in like grass, if it's in a little grass hole or something like that. But try to make a long cast, and you just want to work the bait in towards the bed and just let it slowly sink down in there and watch your line. Watch for your line to twitch. So if you're not getting bit on that, if that's not aggressive enough, then we start stepping it up. So step 2 is a Texas rig. Now, a Texas rig allows you to get that bait right in that sweet spot. There's usually one part of the bed in particular that a bass just hates for you to be in. And if you could locate that, start experimenting, throwing the Texas rig out there and hit that little root or that little rock or little corner that they're very aggressive on, this is just an excellent way to target that. So the style plastics I like to focus on when you're throwing the Texas rig is bugs and craws, because they're compact. They still have some movement, but a lot of times what happens when a bass is on a bed, they're territorial, so they'll go and they'll grab the bait and they'll just move it away, and then they'll drop it. Then they'll go back to the bed. So having something that is compact gives you a better chance that the bass is actually gonna get the hook. And that's another reason I like to use bright colors like this white or a pearl, because you can see it. You can see when that bait disappears, you know it's in the fish's mouth. You can go ahead and set the hook. Sometimes it's better to go natural and just try to feel that bite. If you're fishing really clear water, the bass is just skittish. So I like to have a couple different color options. Go with something natural, go with something bright. The bandito bug or the Kraken craw, and we even have some smaller sizes. Like this is a 3-inch Kraken craw. You put that on a 2-aught hammer hook on a 1/4-ounce Texas rig, and that thing is super compact, and it's just a low profile too. You get a good hook set. There's not a lot of plastic you have to go through. So non-threatening. When you move it, fish eats it, you got him. Now if that's not working, if that's not aggressive enough, then I like to step up to a jig, and usually a big heavy jig, like a 3/4-ounce juicy jig. You could go with a football jig, something with a big head. The point of this is to stir up the dirt in the bottom. So another reason I like to start out with weightless is it doesn't really disturb the bed much. A light Texas rig won't disturb the bed much. When you start getting into the heavy jigs, it's gonna disturb the bed. That's gonna reduce your visibility, so this is something I like to do a little later, but this is an aggressive technique, and I'm just gonna show you how I'll rig up a craw or a bug on the back of this. So I'm gonna go with a natural colored trailer here. It's actually a Kraken craw trailer. So it has a rattle in it, aggressive, again, sound. And you're just gonna thread that on your jig. Got your plastic keeper on here. Thread that on, just like that. So now you have a rattling, heavy, this is a 3/4-ounce jig right here. And when this bait sits on the bottom, those craws those legs are gonna slowly stand up. And that gives that defensive craw posture. and it's just that aggression gets that bass fired up. So the whole goal, you just want to shake this thing in place, move it a little bit around the bed, get that dirt stirred up. It's invading the nest, and the bass just can't stand that. So this is an aggressive tactic, and it's just an awesome way to get a big bass fired up if they're not getting fired on the more subtle techniques. So next tactic, going back to finesse, is a drop shot. With this technique, your weight is going to be in the bed, and your bait is on a small hook suspended in the bed. So it's really in the fish's face. Smallmouth can't stand this. They slurp it. And I've caught a lot of largemouth using this technique too. It's really simple. The nice thing about the drop shot is you can twitch your bait, you can move that without really moving your weight anywhere. So you can keep it in place and really shake it, suspend. You just want a nose hook, your drop shot, bait, whatever you want to use. This is a drag and drop. You could also use a little craw or something like that. But you just want to give yourself about 6 to 8 inches of line above your weight, and you just want to twitch that. It just goes up and down. It's just dangling right in their face, and they suck it in. It's non-aggressive, and they can just breathe it in sometimes. You really got to watch your line. So I'll go to this if the aggressive tactics aren't working. The last thing, and this is the nuclear bomb, is throwing a swim bait, a hard jointed swim bait. This is a bluegill flavored contender right here. So this is a jointed swim bait. It suspends. It's actually a slow sinking. But you want to throw this past the bed and around the bed and swim it, approach it in. And then what I like to do when I get close is snap the rod and get that bait to twitch and then stop and just give that aggressive turn. And sometimes that bass will rush out of that bed and grab the bluegill. They'll slap at it. They'll just try to get it the heck out of their bed. And sometimes this isn't the thing they actually eat, but it gets them fired up enough where you can throw that Texas rig back in there and they eat it on the first cast. So it's a way to really get bass fired up to get them to eat other things as well. So it's a good tactic just to keep on the end of the line to get them fired up. Last thing to keep in mind is your eyeballs. If you can't see what's going on down there, you won't know which one of these techniques is gonna make the bass react the best. So get some polarized sunglasses like Mondo Optics so you can see what's going on in the bed. So those are some top bed fishing techniques. You wanna stay tuned for more tips and tricks, subscribe right here to the Googan Lab.